It's pretty surprising the amount of bipartisan support there is around this bill. What is the future of TikTok looking like?
Right. So the House voted overwhelmingly for the bill, but its future at the Senate is way less certain because it's sort of lacking a companion bill at the Senate. And we saw the CEO in D.C. and they have a lot of lobbyists in the D.C. So the most immediate action from TikTok will still be lobbying against the bill at the Senate. And then if it does become a reality, sources told us earlier this week that TikTok will try to go through the legal route, like they did in 2020 when Trump tried to force a sale of TikTok. Yeah. So they'll be using the First Amendment courts to fight it in the
You've been talking to a lot of sources about what's happening behind closed doors within the company. Are they looking beyond just the legal sort of challenges? What are they thinking about? Is it more of a divestment? Are they even thinking about a sale at this point?
Right. So from what we heard from sources is that the divestment possibility is really a last resort for the company. So we don't have much clarity on how that will play out because a lot of things are unknown. Like, will it be the sale of TikTok US alone, or will it be okay if ByteDance remain a minority shareholder? These are the things we have to figure out later down the road, I guess.
And Rebecca, it seems like despite the bipartisan support, you're still seeing it divide Democrats and Republicans. When you have President Biden saying he would sign this bill into law, President Trump, though, who actually kind of started this sort of ban on TikTok, reversed his position just last week. It's quite interesting. What are we seeing in terms of the debate around that?
Well, I think the overhang here and the big presiding factor is the US election and precisely how it is that Biden, we're clearer on how he's going to position himself on China. Trump, less so. We're just starting to see those signs. Of course, he did come out to say that, but previously has made these comments about introducing these 60% tariffs on Chinese imports into the US. And so we do have a bit more of this sort of whiplash messaging from Trump himself. It is worth saying, though, that when it comes to TikTok, this is not just another sort of geo-economic flashpoint that we've seen in the same way that it comes for, let's say, autos or, let's say, chip technology, which are sort of somewhat esoteric. This is a very relatable touch point for the US election, and that makes it a very different issue from some of those sort of the geo-economic policy and the national security policy around those more strategic technologies.
And we did hear from the China Foreign Ministry leading up before, of course, this bill was passed in the House. Let's take a listen.
In recent years, although the US has not found any evidence of TikTok threatening national security, it has never stopped going after TikTok. This practice of resorting to hegemonic moves when one cannot succeed in fair competition disrupts normal operations of businesses, undermines international investors' confidence in the investment environment, sabotages the normal international economic and trade order, and will eventually backfire on the US itself.
So if this bill does go into law, Rebecca, I mean, is it safe to say that this could further just, I guess, worsen tensions between the US and China?
I think it certainly is going to present some kind of showdown between the US and China. And that issue of fair competition is an interesting one because it's actually something that European and US officials have long complained about, that unfair market practice that their firms have to face in China. And China is currently, or Beijing at least, is currently in this phase of trying to restore confidence among foreign investors. We had that FDI measure fall to a 30-year low for last year. We had this mention in the MPC specifically that Beijing is going to try and improve the process for both international and all domestic local firms in the bidding process for government bids and so on. And so we see this sort of attempt, this sort of conciliatory attempt somewhat from Beijing at this moment. But we know, of course, that some of the frustrations that MOFA brought up yesterday are the same frustrations that other multinationals complain about operating in China too.
Yeah, I mean, you have YouTube, you don't have Facebook in China as well. Jianping, I'll ask you, I mean, is this company able to thrive still without the U.S. market?
ByteDance first and foremost has its major business in China, and it's doing okay, relatively speaking, if we compare it to Tencent or Alibaba, which has taken a bigger blow from the macro downturn. And for TikTok specifically, U.S. is still its most lucrative market, but it's doing okay in Southeast Asia, and it's expanding in Europe. Yeah. So I would say it will be a huge blow for them, but they can still survive.
I mean, whether it's divestment, whether it's a sale, I mean, what are you hearing about? Are there actually companies out there that are actually interested in buying?
There was a news article a couple of days ago saying the former Blizzard CEO have reached out to ByteDance. But very interestingly, ByteDance denied the report on their Chinese social media account. They rarely do so because, as many tech companies, they are trying to stay away from the spotlight. But that's interesting because I think they want to send a message to the Chinese public because they don't want to give the image of even selling out to Americans.